The apartment felt like a blank page, and not in a good way. It was the kind of blank that wasn't waiting for a story, but was determined to remain empty forever. Anya sat on a simple wooden stool that the couple had brought in for the meeting, the coolness seeping through her jeans. The space echoed with every small movement, a cough, the shift of a foot, the hum of the refrigerator that was the only thing left in the kitchen. It was a clean slate, but a sterile one, scrubbed of any personality or warmth. The man, David, was pacing. He had the kind of energy that needed to be doing something, checking things off a list. He was all sharp angles and practicality, from his neatly trimmed hair to his polished shoes. "So, as you can see," he said, gesturing around the vast, empty living room, "it's a good canvas. We're ripping up the floors, putting in new ones. The kitchen is getting a complete gut job. We want it done right, but we want it simple." Anya nodded, her notebook resting on her lap. She'd drawn a rough layout of the apartment, but the page was mostly bare. It was hard to add any inspiring flourishes when the client's energy was so functional. The woman, Rebecca, was standing by the large window, looking down at the street below. She was quieter, her presence softer. While David's voice filled the space, Rebecca's was a silence that seemed to absorb sound. Anya kept glancing at her, trying to read her in the reflection of the glass. Was that a hint of a sigh? Did her shoulders just slump a little? "We've seen too many of our friends get talked into these trends," David continued, finally stopping his pacing to lean against the bare kitchen counter. "You know, the bold accent walls, the weird light fixtures that look like a science experiment. 2 years later, they hate it. It hurts the resale value. We're not those people. We're long-term thinkers." "Of course," Anya said, her voice professional and calm, even though small. Heavy stones seemed to be forming in her stomach. "Longevity and timeless design are key. We can definitely create a space that feels fresh for years to come." She meant it, but not in the way he did. For Anya, timeless design came from soul, from character, from a space that told a story about the people who lived in it. A home should be a collection of memories and personalities, not just a good investment. Rebecca turned from the window. She had a small, crumpled paint swatch in her hand that she'd been fiddling with. It was a soft, warm color, like a dusty rose or a terracotta pot baked in the sun. "We were thinking neutrals mostly," she said, her voice softer than David's. "Grays, whites, maybe a beige." David jumped in. "A sophisticated gray, not a moody one. Something light and clean. We want the space to feel bigger, brighter. No clutter. Every piece needs to have a function. We don't want any dust collectors," said the words dust collectors, like they were a swear word. Anya forced a smile that felt like it was cracking her face. "Right. Functional. Clean." She jotted down the words, sophisticated gray. Nitrogen monoxide, dust collectors. The letters looked stark and lonely on her page. This was her nightmare job. The kind of project that paid the bills but chipped away at her spirit. She had started her own design business a year ago, fueled by a passion for transforming houses into homes. But passion didn't exactly pay the rent, and a string of small, uninspiring jobs had left her bank account feeling as empty as this apartment. She needed this. She really, really needed this. Rebecca pulled out a tablet and swiped it open. "We have a Pinterest board," she said, a little apologetically. "Just to give you an idea of the feel." Anya leaned in, trying to keep her expression neutral. The board popped up, and there it was, a sea of sameness. Room after room of pristine white walls, gray sofas, glass coffee tables, and abstract art that looked like it was generated by a computer. It was beautiful, in a cold, museum-like way. It was the kind of design you saw in a high-end hotel, not a place where people laughed, cried, and spilled wine. It was a catalog, not a life. As Rebecca slowly scrolled through the images, her finger paused for a fraction of a second on one picture. It was the same basic setup: white walls, gray furniture, but on a simple wooden side table, there was a single vase. It wasn't just any vase. It was a deep, vibrant cerulean blue, the color of a summer sky after a storm. It was the only splash of intense color in the entire board, a tiny rebel shouting in a library of whispers. Rebecca's thumb hovered over it, and for a moment, a flicker of something longing crossed her face before she quickly swiped to the next image. Another perfect, colorless room. Anna saw it. She saw the whole story in that 1-second pause. David wanted a fortress of practicality, a safe, neutral box that wouldn't lose value. But Rebecca? Rebecca was hiding a key inside that box. She was the one who would have to live in this space day in and day out. And a tiny part of her was dreaming of a blue vase. "So," David said, clapping his hands together, breaking the spell, "what do you think? Can you work with that?" "It's pretty basic, I know." Anya looked from David's confident, expectant face to Rebecca's, which was now carefully neutral again. She thought of her own empty bank account, the pile of bills on her desk at home. She thought of the creative drought she'd been in, the feeling that her passion was slowly being ground down by the need to just get by. Taking this job felt like a defeat. It felt like agreeing to build a beautiful cage. But then she saw that flash of blue in her mind's eye. She closed her notebook. The sound loud in the quiet room. A new resolve, quiet but firm, settled in her chest. She could do this. She could give them their basic, she could build their cage. But she was a designer. She knew how to find the cracks, how to let the light in. She could follow their rules to the letter and still, somehow, tell Rebecca's story. "Yes," Anya said, her voice clearer and stronger than before. "I can absolutely work with that. I understand completely. You want something sophisticated, timeless, and functional. A perfect, clean backdrop for your life." She stood up and extended her hand to David, who shook it firmly. "Excellent. When can you start?" "As soon as you're ready," Anya replied, her gaze shifting to Rebecca. She gave the woman a small, genuine smile that wasn't about the business deal. It was a promise. Rebecca seemed to see it, and for the first time, her neutral expression softened into something that looked a little like hope. As Anya walked out of the apartment and into the bustling hallway, the sterile, empty air of the condo seemed to cling to her clothes. But in her mind, that one defiant blue vase was glowing. They had asked for a blank page, but she had just decided to write a secret poem in the margins. The silence of her own small office was a welcome relief after the echoing emptiness of the client's apartment. Anya's space was the complete opposite of the sterile condo she'd just left. It was a chaotic, vibrant mess of creativity. Fabric swatches and jewel tones were draped over every surface. A collection of quirky pottery she'd picked up at flea markets sat on her shelves, and a half-finished painting of a stormy sea leaned against the wall. Her desk was a landscape of paint-splattered palettes, scribbled on napkins and books filled with dog-eared pages of inspiring interiors. This was her world, a world built on color, texture, and story. And now she had to voluntarily step out of it and into a world of gray. She slumped into her worn leather chair, a sigh escaping her lips before she could stop it. The brief was sitting on her desk, printed out and stark. Sophisticated gray. Clean lines. No clutter. Functional. The words felt like weights. For the next few days, she tried to work. She pulled out her supplier catalogs, her laptop open to a dozen tabs for minimalist furniture. But her heart wasn't in it. She'd click through images of sleek, gray sofas and glass-stopped coffee tables, and a feeling of dread would wash over her. It was like being a chef forced to cook only with unseasoned boiled chicken and plain rice. It was sustenance, but it wasn't food. It was a room, but it wasn't a home. She was about to close her laptop in defeat when the image of that blue vase flashed in her mind again. It was so vivid, so out of place on that Pinterest board of beige. It was a crack in the dam. Anya sat up straight, a new energy starting to buzz under her skin. She couldn't give them the blue vase, not directly. David would veto it in a second as a dust collector and a trendy piece. But she could give them the feeling of the blue vase. She could give them the sky that the vase was reflecting. Her mission changed. She was no longer just fulfilling a brief. She was on a treasure hunt. The treasure was hidden within the boring, safe parameters they had set. She started with the walls. A sophisticated gray, David had said. Anya pulled out her massive paint deck, the one with hundreds of gray squares. At first, they all looked the same, flat, cold, lifeless. She spread them out on her desk, a sea of monotony. But then, she started looking at them differently. She held them up to the light, one by one. She noticed that some had a blue undertone, making them feel cold and industrial. Others had a greenish tint, which felt sickly. And then she found it. It was a gray, yes, but it had the faintest, almost imperceptible hint of warmth to it, like the color of stones on a beach at sunset. It wasn't beige. It wasn't pink. It wasn't overtly warm, but it wasn't cold either. It was a gray that could hug you back. She held the swatch, silver marlin, and felt a thrill. This was it. This was her first secret. It was exactly what they asked for, but it was so much more. Next, the floors. They had planned on a simple, light oak or a pale gray laminate. Functional. Resale-friendly. Boring. Anya spent hours online, searching for something that fit the brief but had a soul. She found a supplier that specialized in reclaimed wood from old European buildings. It was more expensive, and it was a risk. But she found a batch of wide plank oak from a decommissioned factory in France. It was pale, yes, but it had a subtle, warm grain and the occasional tiny knot or dark spot from a bolt long since removed. It had history. It had character. It was still a light wood floor, but it told a story of a life lived. It's not just a factory finish. She had to present these ideas. This was the test. She arranged a meeting back at the apartment, which now had demolition dust coating every surface. David was there, supervising the crew, looking harried and important. Rebecca was there too, quietly sweeping up a corner of the room. "'Kay," David said, not looking up from his phone. "Show us what you've got. Keep it simple." Anya took a deep breath and launched into her performance. She was no longer the frustrated artist. She was a savvy consultant. "So, for the walls, I've selected a high-end paint in a color called silver marlin. It's a timeless, sophisticated gray as you requested. The reason I chose this specific shade is for its versatility. It has a very subtle, warm undertone that prevents it from feeling sterile or cold. It will adapt beautifully to the natural light throughout the day, keeping the space feeling consistently bright and welcoming, which is a huge plus for long-term livability and, of course, resale value." She used his words. She spoke his language. David grunted, still distracted. "Fine. Gray is gray. As long as it's not some weird purple gray." He finally looked at the swatch. "Huh. It's not bad. Clean." Anya held her breath and turned to Rebecca, who had put down her broom and come closer. She held the swatch out to her. Rebecca's fingers brushed against the small paper square. She didn't say anything, but she held it for a long moment, her thumb stroking its surface. A tiny, almost invisible smile touched the corner of her mouth before she caught herself and handed it back. It was all the confirmation Anya needed. "Okay." And the floors, Anya continued, her confidence growing. "I know you wanted a light wood. I found a fantastic option. It's a reclaimed French oak." She showed them the photos on her tablet. "It's incredibly durable and has a beautiful, subtle grain. It gives the space a sense of history and quality that you just can't get with new wood. It's an investment in character, which again will only add to the home's unique appeal down the line." David squinted at the screen. "It looks a bit imperfect. Those dark spots." "That's the beauty of it," Anya said smoothly. "It's patina. It tells a story. It shows the wood is authentic and has a past. It's the difference between a mass-produced print and an original piece of art. Both are pictures, but one has soul." She held her breath. Waiting for the verdict, he was quiet for a full 10 seconds, which felt like an eternity. "Okay," he said finally. "I see your point. Let's do it. Just make sure they seal it good. I don't want any splinters." Anya felt a wave of relief so powerful it almost made her dizzy. She had one. She had smuggled warmth and history into their basic box. and they had approved it because she had framed it as a smart, practical choice. A week later, the painters were in. Anya stopped by to check on their progress. The first coat of silver marlin was up on the largest wall in the living room. It looked gray. Just plain gray. A knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. Had she imagined it? Was it just a trick of the light in her own office? She stood there, watching the painter work, her heart sinking. But then, as the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, the light streamed through the large window and hit the wall. And it happened. The gray wall seemed to warm up, to come alive. It shed its cold gray skin and glowed with the soft, rosy hue of a twilight sky. It was subtle, almost magical. It was the color of the alleyways in Rebecca's secret Italy. Rebecca walked into the room then, carrying a box of supplies. She stopped dead, her eyes fixed on the wall. She saw the transformation happening in real time. She looked at Anya, and this time she didn't hide her smile. It was wide and full of wonder. She didn't need to say a word. Anya saw it all in her expression. She had delivered the basic, but she had also delivered the brilliance. The room was no longer a cage. It was waiting for its story to begin. The transformation was beginning to feel less like a renovation and more like a quiet resurrection. Anya stood in the center of the living room, the scent of fresh paint and natural wood oil filling the air. The reclaimed French oak floors were down, their wide planks stretching across the apartment like a calm wooden sea. Each board had its own personality, subtle variations in color. The ghost of a nail hole here, a dark, rich knot there. It was everything David had asked for in a floor light, durable, high quality. But it was so much more. It had a soul. The silver marlin gray on the walls was no longer just a color. It was a mood shifter. In the morning, it was crisp and professional. In the afternoon sun, it softened into a warm, stony beige. And now in the twilight, it held the light, casting a rosy, peaceful glow that made the entire space feel like a gentle embrace. David was there, doing his final walkthrough with the floor installer. He was in his element, pointing, questioning, ensuring every detail was perfect from a practical standpoint. The finish is matte, right? I don't want anything glossy. Shows too many scratches. The installer assured him it was a durable matte finish. David nodded, satisfied. He ran a hand over the floor. This is good. This is real quality. You can feel it. Anya smiled to herself. He was seeing the investment, the craftsmanship, the resale value. He couldn't see the poetry, but he could feel its quality. And for now, that was enough. Rebecca was quieter than usual. She had been the first to take her shoes off and walk barefoot across the new floors, her toes wiggling into the grain. She stood by the window now, her reflection, a soft silhouette against the city lights, beginning to twinkle outside. She hadn't said much, but her posture had changed. The slight slump in her shoulders was gone. She seemed taller, more present in the space. She was no longer just a visitor in an empty box. She was starting to inhabit it. With the main structure in place, the next battle was about to begin. The furniture. This was where the real personality, or lack thereof, would shine through. Anya had steeled herself for this. She knew David would have a spreadsheet. He probably had a list of approved, safe furniture from a big box store. All of it modular, gray, and utterly devoid of life. Furniture, David said, clapping his hands together as the installer packed up his tools. I was thinking we'd go to that big warehouse place on the weekend. They have that whole Scandinavian minimalist line. Clean, simple, and the price is right. We can get the whole living room set in one trip. Anya's heart sank. That was her worst-case scenario. The apartment would look like a page from their original, soul-crushing Pinterest board. That's a great option for efficiency, she said, choosing her words carefully. But before we commit, I'd like to show you a few pieces I've pre-selected. They're all within the budget, but they offer a bit more. Longevity in terms of construction. Think of it as an investment in craftsmanship, just like the floors. David looked skeptical. Anya, a couch is a couch. As long as it's comfortable and gray, I'm happy. I agree, she said, pulling out her tablet. And comfort and color are our top priorities. But let's talk about the bones of the room. We need a good media console, something to ground the space and hold the television. She swiped to an image of a low, long cabinet made of a dark, almost black wood. It was incredibly simple in form, with clean lines and no visible hardware except for a small, recessed pull on each door. It was the definition of basic. David peered at the screen. It's a black box. What's so special about it? It's not black. It's a natural, ebonized oak, Anya explained, her voice smooth and confident. The color comes from a natural process, not a stain, so the wood's natural grain is still visible, up close. It gives it a texture and a depth that a simple lacquered piece wouldn't have. More importantly, look at this. She zoomed in on a photo of the open drawer. These are hand-cut dovetailed joints. You don't see that anymore. It's an old-world technique that means this cabinet will last a lifetime. It won't start wobbling or falling apart in 5 years. It's a piece of furniture you'll have forever. That's a real investment. He was quiet, considering it. He was an accountant. He understood the logic of long-term value over short-term savings. It's expensive, it is, Anya admitted. But it's a one-time purchase. You buy this, and you never have to buy another media console again. Think of the money you'll save in the long run. Just then, David's phone rang. It was his office. He frowned, stepping away to take the call, his voice becoming a low, urgent murmur in the corner. Anya and Rebecca were left alone. Standing in front of the image of the dark wood cabinet on the tablet, Rebecca leaned in closer, her eyes tracing the lines of the piece. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her voice so soft Anya had to strain to hear it. "It is, isn't it?" Anya replied, her voice equally quiet. "It's strong and simple, but it has a lot of character." Rebecca reached out, her finger gently touching the screen where the wood grain was visible. "It reminds me of something," she said, her gaze distant. "On that trip, we walked on these old wooden piers that stretched out into the water. They were weathered by the sun and the salt, and they had turned this same dark, silvery color. They were so strong. You could feel the history under your feet." Anya felt a jolt of excitement, a spark of pure triumph. This was it. This was the key she had been looking for. Piers, weathered wood, strength, history. She wasn't just decorating a room. She was rebuilding a memory. "That's exactly the feeling it gives me too," she said softly. "A sense of quiet strength." David hung up his phone and walked back over, his business face still on. "All right, sorry about that. So the black box. What's the verdict?" Rebecca looked up at him, and for the first time she didn't just passively agree. She met his gaze directly. "I really like it, David. It feels solid, like the floors." David looked from his wife's determined face to Anya's calm, confident expression. He sighed, a sound of reluctant surrender. "Fine. The forever cabinet. But the couch is coming from the warehouse? Deal?" "Deal," Anya said, a smile playing on her lips. But she wasn't done. Her next challenge was the dust collectors, the art. The walls were vast and empty. David had been clear, no weird art. Maybe one of those generic abstract prints in black and white. Something neutral. Anya knew exactly what to do. She had spent days searching, not for paintings, but for photographs. She found a series by a little-known photographer who specialized in minimalist, textural landscapes. She presented 3 large black and white prints to them. They were stunning, but in a very quiet way. The first was a close-up of calm water, the surface rippled with a gentle breeze, creating a pattern of soft grays and whites. The second was an extreme close-up of the weathered, sun-bleached wood of an old boat, its grain cracked and beautiful. The third was a shot of smooth, wet stones at the edge of a shore, arranged just so by the tide. David frowned. "Okay, what am I looking at?" "It's just stuff." "Exactly," Anya said. "It's neutral, it's sophisticated, and it's not distracting. But it adds an incredible amount of depth and texture to the room. It draws your eye in without screaming for attention. It's the kind of art that grows on you. You'll see new things in it every time you look. And most importantly, it's timeless. It's not a trend. It's just beautiful. Rebecca walked up to the prints, her eyes wide. She didn't say anything, but she ran a finger over the image of the weathered wood. The same way she had touched the tablet screen. Anya could see she recognized it. She saw the pier, the boat, the water. She saw her own memory hanging on the wall, disguised as a neutral, decorative piece. "I like them," Rebecca said, her voice quiet but firm. "They're calm." David looked at the 3 prints, then at his wife, then at the price list Anya had provided. He rubbed his temples. "Fine," he grumbled, "but this is it. No more investments. We're getting the gray couch from the warehouse, and we're done." "Of course," Anya said, her heart soaring. "That's all we need." A week later, Anya supervised the installation. The dark, ebonized oak cabinet was placed against the warm gray wall. The 3 black and white photographs were hung above it. The room was still mostly empty, but it already felt complete. It had a story. It had a soul. Rebecca came home while Anya was there. She walked into the living room and just stopped. She looked at the cabinet, then at the photographs. A slow smile spread across her face, a real, unguarded smile of pure happiness. She walked over to the image of the water and traced the ripples with her eyes. Then she turned to Anya. "Thank you," she said, and the 2 words held more weight than a 1,000-page contract. Anya just nodded. She had given them the basic, the neutral, the functional, but she had also given back a piece of a forgotten memory. It's framed and hung on the wall for all to see, even if only one of them knew its true meaning. The rebellion was a success, and the brilliance was starting to shine through. The day the sofa arrived, it felt like an invasion. 2 delivery men wrestled with 2 massive cardboard-clad boxes through the doorway, their grunts and curses echoing in the nearly finished apartment. They unpacked it on the newly laid floor, and there it was. The sofa. It was exactly what David had wanted. A vast, L-shaped behemoth upholstered in a durable, medium-gray fabric. It was functional. It was comfortable. It was big enough for a whole family to get lost in. And in the context of the room Anya had so carefully curated, it was a disaster. It was like a gray whale had been beached in the middle of an art gallery. It was loud in its quietness, a statement of pure, unadulterated basicness that threatened to suck all the soul out of the space. David was thrilled. "There she is," he said, patting the armrest with a look of fatherly pride. "Perfect. Just what we needed. No fuss, no frills. Just a good, solid place to sit." He was already on his phone, taking a picture to send to friends. His chest puffed out with the satisfaction of a smart purchase. Rebecca walked around it, her expression unreadable. She sat on one of the cushions, testing its give. Was undeniably comfortable. "It's very big," she said, her voice lacking any real enthusiasm. Anya stood by the window, her hands clenched into small fists inside her pockets. This was it. This was the moment she could lose the war. All her subtle victories, the warm gray walls, the historic floors, the soulful cabinet, the memory-laden photographs were in danger of being overshadowed by this monolith of mediocrity. The room was no longer a harmonious composition. It was a beautiful painting with a giant gray sticker slapped right in the center. She knew she couldn't fight David on this. He had drawn a line in the sand, and this was his territory. Arguing now would only create conflict and make her seem difficult and unprofessional. She had to accept the sofa. But she didn't have to let it win. "Okay," Anya said, her voice calm and professional, belying the turmoil inside. "The foundation is set. Now for the fun part. The final layer, the things that make it feel like a home." She was talking about textiles, the soft furnishings, the final, crucial touches that could either make or break a room. David, already satisfied with his victory, was barely listening. Yeah, pillows and blankets. Whatever you and Rebecca think is best. I've got to get back to work." He grabbed his jacket, gave the sofa one last approving pat, and left, leaving the 2 women alone with the gray beast. Anya and Rebecca looked at each other. The air was thick with unspoken words. "It's not terrible," Rebecca offered, trying to be positive. "It's not," Anya agreed, walking over to it. "It's a blank canvas. a very, very large gray canvas. And we are going to paint it with comfort and memory. She had a plan. She hadn't just been waiting for this day. She had been preparing for it. For the past week, she had been on a secret mission, hunting for the perfect weapons to win this final, subtle battle. She pulled out her phone and opened a folder filled with images. "I was thinking about the final touches," she began, her voice low and conspiratorial. "About how a room should feel when you actually live in it. It should be soft. It should be inviting. It should tell your story." Rebecca leaned in, her curiosity piqued. Anya swiped to the first image. It was a close-up of a piece of fabric. It was a deep, rich velvet, in a shade of blue that was so intense it seemed to have its own light. It wasn't just any blue. It was the color of the Mediterranean Sea at midnight, the color of the blue vase from the Pinterest board, the color of a forgotten dream. Rebecca's breath hitched. "Oh, I thought we could get a few pillows in this," Anya said softly. "Just to add a little depth, little color that doesn't shout but whispers." Rebecca looked from the phone to the gray sofa and back again. She could already see it. That single splash of color would be like a key turning in a lock. "Yes," she whispered. "Please." Anya smiled and swiped to the next picture. It was a chunky, hand-knit throw blanket in a creamy, off-white color. And this, for texture, something to snuggle under with a book. "It feels like seafoam, doesn't it? Or the soft sand on a beach?" Rebecca nodded, her eyes wide. She was completely under Anya's spell now. She wasn't just looking at fabrics. She was feeling a memory. Anya showed her more. A pair of pillows made from a heavy, textured linen, the color of wet sand. A smaller one with a subtle woven pattern in shades of gray and silver, like fish scales shimmering in the water. Each piece was a verse in the poem she was writing. Each one was a direct, yet subtle, reference to that trip Rebecca had mentioned. The one that held the key to her true desires. The next day, Anya arrived with several large bags. Rebecca met her at the door, her face alive with anticipation. Together, they unwrapped their treasures. The velvet pillow was impossibly soft to the touch, the deep blue pile shifting with the light. The knit throw was heavy and warm. The linen pillows were rustic and honest. They began to arrange them on the gray sofa. It was a transformative process. Anya placed the two large blue velvet pillows at the very back, creating a dramatic anchor. They leaned against the gray fabric like jewels on a velvet cloth. The color was so rich, it made the gray of the sofa seem intentional, a perfect calm backdrop for this burst of life. Next, they added the linen pillows, their nubby texture providing a contrast to the smooth velvet. The throw was draped artfully over one arm, its creamy tendrils spilling onto the floor. It wasn't just decoration, it was an invitation. It's an invitation to curl up, to get comfortable, to live. Rebecca stood back, her hand covering her mouth. The room had changed completely. The sofa was no longer a gray whale. It was an island. A luxurious, comfortable island of texture and color, sitting in the beautiful, serene sea they had created. The gray was no longer boring. It was the perfect, neutral shore that allowed the brilliant blue of the water to shine. She walked over to the sofa and sank into it. Right between the two blue velvet pillows, she picked one up, hugging it to her chest. She closed her eyes for a moment, a deep, contented sigh escaping her lips. When she opened them, they were shining. "It's our room," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's really our room." Anya felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. This was why she did what she did. It wasn't about creating pretty spaces. It was about giving people a place where they could truly be themselves. She had followed every one of David's rules. She had given them the basic, but by weaving in Rebecca's secret story, she had delivered the brilliance. Just then, David came home. He walked in, tired from his day, and stopped. He looked at the room, his eyes scanning the space. He saw the sofa, but he didn't see a gray whale. He saw a complete, inviting living room. He saw his wife, looking happier and more relaxed than he had seen her in months. "Well," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face, "I'll be damned, it looks great. Really great." He walked over and sat down on the other end of the sofa, testing one of the linen pillows. "You were right," he said to Anya. "It needed a little. something. This is perfect. He didn't see the secret poem. He didn't see the references to the sea or the memories of a trip. He just saw a room that looked expensive, comfortable, and well-designed. He saw a successful investment, and that was okay. The brilliance wasn't for him to understand. It was for Rebecca to feel. And as Anya quietly let herself out, leaving the couple to their new island of comfort, she knew she had succeeded. They had wanted something basic, and she had given them. A home they could love, even if only one of them knew the true reason why. The silence that followed David's approval was different from the silences that had come before. It wasn't empty or awkward. It was full. It was the comfortable, peaceful quiet of a room that had finally found its purpose. The last rays of the afternoon sun streamed through the window, hitting the reclaimed wood floors and making the gray walls glow with that soft, rosy light that Anya had secretly planned for. The room was alive. David leaned back into the sofa, a look of genuine contentment on his face. He wasn't analyzing the resale value or checking for scuffs. He was just... he said, his voice softer than usual. I was picturing a showroom. Something that looked nice in pictures. But this feels like a place you can actually live in. He picked up one of the linen pillows, feeling its rough texture. I don't know what any of this stuff is called, but it all works. It feels right. Anya felt a wave of relief wash over her, so warm and profound it almost brought tears to her eyes. He didn't need to understand the why. He didn't need to know about the Italian alleyways or the weathered piers. He just needed to feel the result. The brilliance wasn't in the individual pieces. It was in the feeling they created together. A feeling so powerful it could even break through the walls of practicality he had built around himself. Rebecca, who had been quietly watching the exchange, finally spoke. Her voice was clear and steady, no longer a whisper. It's more than right, David. It's ours. She looked at Anya, and her eyes were full of a gratitude so deep it went beyond words. It was a look that said, "You saw me. You heard me?" Anya just smiled back, a small, knowing smile. This was her payment, the real one. The check was just a formality. Rebecca stood up, a new energy in her movements. "I'm going to make some tea. Does anyone want some?" It was such a simple domestic offer, but it felt monumental. She was no longer a guest in the space. She was its hostess, its heart. As she walked towards the kitchen, she trailed her fingers along the top of the ebonized oak cabinet, a small, unconscious gesture of ownership and affection. While she was gone, David turned to Anya. "She's happier," he said quietly, as if sharing a secret. "I mean really happier. She hasn't been this herself. In a long time." He looked around the room, trying to connect the dots. "I guess a nice place to live really does make a difference." "It does," Anya agreed, her heart swelling. She had done more than that. She had built a sanctuary for Rebecca's spirit, a place where her memories could live and breathe, disguised as sophisticated. Neutral Design. Rebecca returned with 3 steaming mugs. They sat there for a while, the 3 of them, sipping their tea in the beautiful, quiet room. They talked about small things, the weather, the neighborhood, the surprisingly good quality of the sofa. It was the most normal, most human conversation they had ever had. The professional barrier between designer and client had dissolved, replaced by a simple, shared appreciation for the space they now inhabited. When Anya finally gathered her things to leave, David walked her to the door. "Thank you, Anya," he said, extending his hand. "You were right about the investments. It was worth it." "I'm glad you think so," she said, shaking his hand. Rebecca followed, standing in the doorway as Anya stepped out into the hall. There was a moment of hesitation, and then Rebecca stepped forward and gave her a quick, gentle hug. It was an unexpected, heartfelt gesture. "Thank you," she whispered, just for Anya to hear. "For everything." Anya nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She walked down the hallway, the sound of the apartment door closing softly behind her. She felt a lightness in her steps, a profound sense of satisfaction that settled deep in her bones. This project had started as a compromise, a job she had to take, but it had become a testament to her belief that a home is more than just a collection of things. It's a feeling, a memory, a story. A few weeks later, Anya was in her office, surrounded by the organized chaos of her creative world. She was working on a new project, a vibrant, colorful family home that was the complete opposite of the basic condo. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Rebecca. The subject line was simply, "Our home." Anya clicked it open. The email wasn't long, but it was everything she could have hoped for. "Anya, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to send you a quick note and a picture. David and I are so in love with our apartment. It's funny, he says it's the best investment we've ever made. It's not because of the money, but because we actually spend time in it now. He reads in that chair by the window every night. We had our friends over last weekend, and they couldn't stop talking about the vibe. They said it felt so calm and put together, but still really warm and inviting. I've attached a picture. It's not as perfect as your professional photos, but it's how it really looks." Anya scrolled down and opened the photo. It was a snapshot of the living room, taken in the evening. The lamps were on, casting a warm, golden glow. The gray sofa was there, but it didn't look like a gray whale anymore. It looked comfortable, lived in. The blue velvet pillows were plumped up just so. The knit throw was draped over a corner, slightly rumpled, as if someone had just been under it. On the coffee table, a simple, clear acrylic piece David had picked out himself sat 2 mugs and a book left open, face down. It was perfect. It was alive. She scrolled back to the email. David still doesn't get it. He said to me the other day, "I don't know what it is, but I really love those blue pillows. They just feel right." I just smiled. But I know. And every time I look at them, or the photographs on the wall or the floor, I feel like I'm back on that trip. It's like you found a part of me I thought I'd lost and built a room around it. You didn't just give us a basic design. You gave us back a feeling. You gave us our story back. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart. Rebecca Anya read the email twice, then a third time. A single happy tear escaped and rolled down her cheek. She looked around her own office, at the vibrant fabrics and quirky objects that filled her space. She thought about the journey of that project, from the cold, empty condo to this warm, heartfelt email. She had learned something profound. Basic wasn't the enemy. Basic was just an opportunity. It was a blank canvas, a quiet melody waiting for a brilliant secret chord to be added. She had delivered on her promise, giving them exactly what they asked for on the surface, while giving one of them what she truly needed underneath. And in doing so, she had not only created a beautiful home, but had also, in a small way, healed a small, forgotten part of someone's heart. She closed her laptop, a renewed sense of purpose filling her. She was ready for the next blank page.